I've had nurses tell me during this season of the pandemic that they hate the word resilient because their administration twisted the definition of the term and used it to minimize the trauma that the nurses were experiencing. And it's actually harming nurses rather than supporting them. Hi, guys. Welcome back to Resilient Nursing. And I was preparing to tell you guys about the 5 secrets of resilient nurses. But in preparing for that, I realized I have to clarify what resilient actually means because there's some incorrect definitions going around in the world of nursing, especially with some leaders using incorrect definitions of what resilience is. And it's actually harming nurses rather than supporting them. So, in case you've been harmed by the word resilient or a nurse leader using it in a harsh or inappropriate way, they just kind of twisted the definition. I want to go over what it actually means as a nurse to be resilient and what we can do to help clarify this situation. So, what do you guys think about when you hear the word resilient? Do you think strong and able to handle difficult situations? That's definitely part of it. Now, what do you feel when I say that nurses need to be more resilient? Don't leave the video. Stay with me, hear me out. The pandemic was good in the way that it highlighted just how strong, capable, competent, creative, and talented the nursing profession truly is. Like, it was definitely our time to shine and just not the year of the nurse that we initially intended at the beginning of 2020. Am I right? But the pandemic has also brought to light a lot of the underlying issues that we've had in the nursing profession. We're talking about those unhealthy strategies nurses use to cope with the stress of the job, the lack of support nurses received from administration, and at times even society, having to MacGyver solutions to critical problems because of limited resources or budget cuts. That just kind of all came to light because we had massive strain on our current healthcare system, but we already knew those problems were there. It's just now there's a microscope looking at us. I've had nurses tell me during this season of the pandemic that they hate the word resilient. And that's because their administration twisted the definition of the term and used it to minimize the trauma that the nurses were experiencing during the COVID surges. Some leadership, again, some, not all, some leaders were amazing and responsive and did the absolute best they could to support their staff. However, there were some who were a little lacking in the way that they responded to nurses hurt. These nurses were telling me that if they complained about lack of resources, they would just get, "You're not resilient enough." If they finally broke down and cried after the 5th patient died that day, "You're not resilient enough." If they were unhappy with the job during these extraordinarily difficult situations and season, "You're just not resilient enough." If that was you and your experience and how your leader handled this pandemic, I am so sorry. You did not deserve to be treated like that. And I honestly would hate the word too if that was the definition being shoved down my throat, because that was going on and leaders were misusing the word resilient. I am here to correct that. Being resilient does not mean never crying or complaining. Being resilient does not mean being happy 100% of the time in every single circumstance. Being resilient means having the ability to bounce back when faced with problems. I'm not talking about perfection or never having a bad day, because we all make mistakes and we all have bad days where our patience is running a little thinner and our tolerance for stupidity is lower than others. Resilience is getting back up after you've been knocked down. It's coming back the next day after a crappy shift and still maintaining a mindset that today is a new day and it's going to be better, even if it's not, but you've still given it a shot and given it your all. And I also want to say that nurses should complain when they are lacking necessary resources. How do you get a problem solved if you just ignore it? Advocating for important resources is what nurses do because we prioritize patient safety. Nurses should also mourn their patients. Shoving emotions down is what we've been taught to do as nurses, right? But in reality, it goes against the core tenets of nursing, because nurses are supposed to be the compassionate and human element of the healthcare system. But by shoving it down and moving on, even though it's necessary and there's a lot of factors that come into play, but if we never address what we shove down, it's just ignoring our humanity. But I'll touch more on that on a later video. Words do have power, and this is just a prime example of how using the wrong definition of a word takes power away from nurses and then just throws it away. So I want to help nurses take back the true meaning of the word resilience. If nurses discover how to capture the true essence of resilience and infuse it into their lives and their practice, they'll overall be happier, manage the stress of the job better, and bounce back from difficulties faster and more efficiently than they do now. Let me know in the comments below what your experience has been with the word resilient, and the good, the bad, the ugly. Just, I want to know what your experience has been. How has your leadership used that word? Also, tell me how you're going to use what we talked about today and find ways to incorporate the true meaning of resilience into your life. Now that I've clarified what the true meaning of resilience is, I will be able to share with you the 5 secrets of resilient nurses, but that is on the next episode. So stay tuned, subscribe, and I'll see you then. Bye.
Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes.